Our keynote speaker today is Frank Schilling, a millionaire technology entrepreneur, angel investor, and pioneer in the domain name industry. Born in Germany, he grew up in Canada and moved to the Cayman Islands in 2003. He founded Name Administration Incorporated, now one of the world's most profitable domain name holding and purchasing companies, and the Uni Registry Corporation, which he sold to Godaddy in 2020. Frank leveraged his keen business instincts to pivot to success, and he's here today to help you learn how to do the same with your business. Let's welcome Frank Schilling.
Hey everyone. Thanks for having me to Flow Business and BTC Business. It's very flattering to be here and share my story, I guess. Beyond sharing my story, I think it's more a story of business in the islands, meaning it's one thing to start a business, in a city like Miami or to start in New York or somewhere else. But it's another thing to grow, nurture, and cultivate a business in the islands, whether it's the Bahamas or whether it's Jamaica or whether it's Cayman. My own journey sort of began in Canada. I started as a bit of a late bloomer, and I think maybe that's what I'll do is I'll recount some of my story and then maybe some of the little life's lessons that I picked up and learned along the way. Maybe that'll help you in your own journey. So, I think the first lesson came late. As I said, it was a late bloomer. What does that mean? It means I started late. I didn't have great success very young. I started sort of in my late 20s, early 30s, started making sort of money on the internet. And the first lesson that I noticed was when you're starting any business, whether it's smaller, most businesses start small, unless you're taking outside capital and you're doing something really large out of the gate. You need to find that little jig that works, that little system where you can get the smell of cash flow. Meaning, you sort of start running your business and you wake up one morning and you sell something for $20, and then the next day you sell it for something for $30, $100, $200, and so on, so that you can see a progression and that wow, that was easy. I can do more and I can grow faster. And you have to sort of, as an entrepreneur, you could just get a feel for the cash flow of whatever undertaking you're doing. So whether it's a small mom and pop home business or whether it's a, something that you're backing with outside capital, either way, you need to kind of feel that flow of cash flow, right? Little money coming in that you get the sense that it's growing. In my own case, that started for me on a very small scale in Canada. And I'm not shy to share that back in those early days, I thought, wow, this is not a great spot to scale from in Canada. I was working from my home. So I went and I talked to an attorney friend of mine, an accountant. He said, a lot of people are running internet businesses, but nobody's really considered doing it from the Caribbean. Have you thought about the Cayman Islands? A lot of people really enjoy it down there. I took one visit and I couldn't believe how good life was in the Cayman Islands. This is 21 years ago. I couldn't believe just how easy and sweet life was. And so I was like, this is just too good. If I could scale a business from here, it'd be amazing. So I within almost like 2 months, I'd made the decision, didn't have children at the time. And I'd made the decision, let's do this. Let's try to make this move. And so I moved to Cayman. I started, I'll never forget arriving in Cayman, just to put this in context. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't have a home paid for. I had a mortgage, I had my business, but I had literally no money in the bank, just to put that in context. I didn't arrive, rich on a private jet. So, and I remember renting the car and leaving a cash deposit for my rental, So anyway, I started working from home and just continuing that same little, what I characterize as a jig, a little apparatus that started making money and cash flow. And I've heard it said, and I think this is true, that when you live in the Cayman Islands or Jamaica or the Bahamas, it is probably the easiest place in the world to start a small business and get it making, $100,000 or $200,000 a year in cash flow, something small. Cash flow, not profits, cash flow. But it's probably the hardest place in the world to scale that $200,000 business into a $200 million business, because there's just not enough people in those places to grow into something very, very large. There's always this sort of ceiling. If you look at the great business people in the islands, they're all either providing the necessities of life, the concrete or the food or fuel, things that everybody on the island needs, or they're small entrepreneurs who run many small businesses and combine those small businesses into something much larger. In my own journey, so I started in my sort of name and advertising business, growing from something very small into something bigger. When I arrived, I was maybe generating 10, 20,000 a month. By the time, within a year, I was generating 120,000 a month, then 200,000 a month, then 350,000 a month. And I clearly remember clearing $500,000 a month, and then $1 million a month, and then 1.8 million a month was my high watermark on that business. And I remember holding that, sustaining that for quite some time in 2004 and 5. So it was a time of incredible growth to go from something very small to something very large and do it remotely on an island. I was able to do that in a way. Living in the islands is actually quite a benefit to an internet entrepreneur because the commutes are short. You don't have far to go to get your dry cleaning and laundry and get dinner, and everything is very close at hand. It's not like crossing town in New York City where it might take you half an hour to get across town. So you can get a lot done in spite of the fact that people would say, "Oh, you're on Cayman time or island time." I found that the people that work in banks, in telecoms, everywhere, people generally, there's not much to do in the islands if you're not a tourist other than work and be with family. So, it's a real. I found people to be really good in the islands to cooperate with, to work with, to help me get the things I needed to grow my business. Right. So I found that it was sort of counterintuitive. You'd think that running a business from the islands is harder. It was actually easier at that point, growing from nothing to something. As I grew my business, and this will happen in any business changed. It changed. So what do I mean by that? When I came to the islands, most of the revenue that I was generating came more from marketing. People would type a domain name and visit the domain name, and I would sell that advertising traffic onto Google or to Yahoo on a paid partnership basis, right? But as the internet evolved and as there became more, as people started to spend more time on blogs and then on social media later, there was more traffic on the internet to sell from, so the price of traffic came down, and so I wasn't making as much revenue from my domain portfolio in advertising as I was, in the high watermark days of 04 and 05. So what I did was, I'd assembled a very large portfolio of names, but I looked at what I'd had. I said, wow, a lot of people are inquiring to buy these names every day. And so what I did was I created, between the years of 05 and 11, I created a brokerage, meaning, almost like a jewelry store. If you have people coming in all day long and saying, how much is this ring? How much is that necklace? I started to boutique sell those names to people who would inquire. I created a CRM, a piece of management software that allows you to manage leads that come in, right? And then we would follow up with prospective buyers and have a team of brokers who could earn a good living selling names on a commission basis, a commission and a small salary. But because the velocity of sales was so high, the brokers could cleave a nice life for themselves. In any event, during those years, that was a really interesting pivot, and it happened like this because in the early days, in the advertising times, I didn't need a big team locally on the island. All of a sudden, I found myself in need of many people, right? And many people means work permits and work permits locally in the Cayman Islands, and I'm sure in the Bahamas and potentially in Jamaica or Bermuda, other islands. They come with a fee, but often those fees don't translate or allow a business to sustain. So one of the best things I did was I was able to meet with government and explain my problem that like this doesn't scale. I need to create a new permitting class of individual that aligns with my business so that I can scale. And again, I was fortunate that I based my business in the Cayman Islands, where I had a receptive government that was well run, well managed, and they were open to my suggestion of, well, that does make sense. Maybe give Frank enough, rope to see where he can go with this. And they did. And what I was able to do was scale that business and bring people down and create a nucleus in the economy, to support a staff of 70 people at its apex. And we grew into that. We started in a very small office in a plaza on the sort of the third floor stoop. And then we moved down into the lower ground floor, into the back corner that was maybe a little less desirable real estate, but we remodeled it and made an old restaurant kind of work for us. And we were able to scale a lot of people in. So, I think the lesson, there is, it's really important to share openly with everybody in your community what you're doing. It'll help you achieve your goals when you are, in business, it's counterintuitive. It often seems like it's in your best interest to be secretive and don't tell anybody I'm going here or what I'm doing over here, that I'm about to do this. I always, in my career, embrace the inverse. I tell everybody everything I'm doing like a completely open book. And what that does is it'll attract like-minded people to you, and it'll automatically identify those who are against you and let you manage, and at least how to manage those two counter forces. You have the people who are trying to help you, and then you have people who are jealous or don't like what you're doing, but it outs them all at once, and it allows you to deal with it without having to worry about secrets and what's going on, things you can't control. It allows you to control your destiny a little better. So what I would encourage anyone operating a business from Cayman or any of the islands is channel well what you're doing and explain everything to everyone. Over-explain. I would meet with government and I would go into the complete backstory about things that maybe would seem irrelevant. But those things really helped me because it allows the people that are potentially there who can help you to sort of look into your soul and understand what you're really about and what you're trying to achieve. So that was something very important for me. And then I ran that business locally in Cayman, for several years. It ran just like a company would in Silicon Valley. We would have a lot. It was a little more expensive to operate from the islands in the sense that people would come down for business and we'd have to put them up in a hotel, but there aren't really budget hotels in the high season, so you're paying full rates. Food is more expensive. We ran in that office. We ran it as a so-called a googly office, meaning we provided breakfast, lunch, and a snack in the afternoon for our staff out of the commercial kitchen that remained from the restaurant. So we ran a fully functioning 180 cover a day restaurant that nobody but our team ever ate at. And another little lesson we picked up in that, it was expensive. It cost us about $1 million a year in food and food service to keep that running. Chef, food loss, wastage, you're going to have theft, things that just disappear, you can't control. But in the mix, it cost us about $1 million a year. But the lesson I learned was we got about $1.1 million in value out of that. It allowed us to grow faster. A lot of software developers, are quirky and they're not taking good care of themselves. They're not eating well. We were able to provide good food. We were able to allow them to focus on their work. And so the office became a bit of a clubhouse. This piece of advice may not work for everyone because it was unique to our business. We had 70 staff members, in front of computers. We just wanted to provide food service so that we wouldn't lose everybody at lunch for if you have an hour at lunch, it could be like an hour and a half. And so that productivity loss was something that, would cost us. Time is the greatest cost. So if I said to you, Frank, even if somebody would have said to me, Frank, your food cost is $1 million, but you're only going to get $800,000 worth of gain, I still would have done it because the $200,000 loss is the amount of time I make up in those guys not, being away from the office and what have you. The productivity gains were so significant that there's real value in that. So I think the lesson for anybody, maybe in your own way, in your own business, you can infer from that is, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Don't think about cutting costs to the bone all the time. Just, you don't want to live like lavishly if you can't afford it, but don't be so frugal that it harms your business prospects, because time is your enemy when you're growing a business. You need to move as fast as you can. We're all getting older. You need to go as quickly as you can. I'll recount a quick side story. When I was building a home in California, when I started to make some money, and there were 3 builders on the job. They were brothers, a younger one, a middle-aged one, and one who was a little older, closer to retirement. But they all worked together on the home. And when I saw my engineers in the office, I thought, these guys are exactly like those builders in California. You've got the young guy, you've got a little middle-aged guy, you've got an older guy who's now leaving and he's going back to Europe. And these guys work as a team, and they create magic when they work together. That's not going to last forever. None of us are going to live forever. People's needs change, people's wants change. And so one day that team breaks up and you lose that magic that you were creating. So it's very important to never take the moment for granted. Move with dispatch when you're growing something. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish where it relates to trying to grow quickly. And that's what I learned with my food service situation there. So thinking forward, let me play forward a little bit. When we'd run the business for several years, we're doing well on the cash flow front. But as I said, everything turns, right? I'd been running the business for 21 years. I'd travel 3 times a year to an industry trade show where everybody would gather in different parts of the world. It's the nature of naming that there's one sort of large industry trade show that travels around the world that's run by our regulator. And so I would go to these industry events, and I would, from time to time, have people approach me and say, we would be open and look at acquiring your portfolio of names or your business if you ever wanted to sell. And so I recall I was in Montreal, and one of these Godaddy approached me and made that statement just again. And I was like, well, let's follow that breadcrumb trail. Let's see where that goes. Let's see what that looks like. And it was an interesting thing at that point. Again, I was traveling a lot back and forth between different industry events. I was traveling to go see Godaddy at their head office, or their office in Cedar Rapids, I should say. And in that process, I learned a little bit about the company, and they learned a little bit about mine. And so we started down the process of what an acquisition might look like. And in that, the biggest takeaway I can share with you from that time was, I clearly recall whether it was Remembrance Day, a national holiday, Halloween, Christmas, New Year's Eve. I mean, every day where it seemed like there should be a holiday, we were working on contracts, paperwork, trying to work through that process. And so, when we announced that deal, the first of what were multiple deals actually, I'd realized that I'd basically worked the entire time from the first moment that we contemplated the conversation. So you really got to love your work. You've really got to love what you're doing to be able to go through the process to build something and then to let it go. You've got to find that right moment to let go so that it doesn't hurt you on the way out. I've heard it said that when, and I think this is true, that one of the most dangerous times for any person in life is when they build a business and they've sold it, because they lose their sort of sense of purpose and they lose their sense of what drove them every day. And I can tell you that's very much true. It's a strange feeling. You all of a sudden you have money in the bank, but you don't know what to do with it, and you don't know, because you've been working so long in your routine, that routine is broken. That can be very hard on you, emotionally, on your physical health. So I think it's very important to try to, as a business owner, try to stay fit, get exercise. I go in the morning at 6 a.m., try to go to the gym. No judgment. You don't have to kill yourself in a workout session, but it's important to get some exercise just to clear your mind and to try to stay healthy so that you can function for your team, because your team is ultimately relying on you and believing in you. As you rely on and believe in them. It really is a team effort to build a business. I'm trying to think of a few other takeaways that I can share with you from that time. But maybe it'll be better to open things up if there's any Q&A, or allow more time for some of the other speakers this morning.
Thank you again. It was so inspiring. So many takeaways, like one of my favorites is, we hear it all the time, Rome was built in a day, right? And you really spoke about that, baby steps, growing that, seeing a little bit of profit grow month after month, year after year. So, you can't chew the whole elephant. You got to take bite-sized pieces. So that's great. You touched on teamwork and mental health and physical health. All those things contribute to success and success in your business. We do have some questions. So if you're ready, we can jump right in.
Fire away. We'll see what comes of it.
All right. So the first question is, hi, Frank. Did you have personal debt while starting? And did you have any outside capital in the early days?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So no is the answer. So and this goes back to what we call bootstrapping a business. What that means is you're taking cash that comes in and then you're reinvesting it back into the business. So, I had debt in the sense that I had a mortgage on my home. I had debt in the sense that I had credit cards that had to be paid every month. But I didn't have any outside capital or like seed capital. And it's often, in my experience, it's better to start a business from absolute nothing and then bootstrap it into something than it is to take on outside capital. Because outside capital, if you don't know where you're going, like there's some things that require outside capital. If you need to buy plant and equipment, if there are things that are just out of reach, you need real estate. I mean, you're going to need outside capital for those things, just to secure them, to allow you to have your base to build your world on top of, right? But when you're growing an actual cash flow business, it should just cash flow. You should start with $1 and make $2. Don't think about trying to take out outside capital to make more, because if your model doesn't work, you're just going to lose your investors' money and have a bigger collapse, so to speak. So far better to take outside capital after you know that the model works and you're cash flowing. And often at that point, you don't need capital. You can do it yourself. If you're trying to go national as a brand and you have a model that works, great. The model works. I know it works in this market. I've tested it in that market. And now I want to open in 26 other markets. Great. But starting from zero and you don't have a good cash flow mechanism and you want to take outside capital to try to get to it, all the time I have people come to me, can I have, would you invest $1 million into this so that I could start from absolute zero into something? Too often it's like there's no model, there's no little jig that's making money. So, you're just, it could fail even more spectacularly. So I would encourage everybody, business owners, to invest in a cash flow mechanism, something small. Start with something small, and I'd encourage investors, like outside investors who are chasing a return, to kind of look at the cash flow or look at the growth of the potential of cash flow. Media companies are notorious for losing money for years, but they grow user base, they grow eyeballs, so there's a potential at any given time to ring fence your losses and turn it into cash flow by cutting costs or what have you. Anyway, long answer, but I didn't have any help, and I wouldn't encourage anybody else to get any either. I'd start small.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, second question. Hi, Frank. What sort of assistance did the government give you aside from hearing you out on your proposal?
Yeah, so they offered a program that, so government is well intended. I live in the Cayman Islands, and so I'm going to give an example. In our country, if you imagine when I came 21 years ago, there are no technology, right? So when there are telephone companies and there are some technology businesses, but they're not traditional like upstart Silicon Valley start from zero technology businesses. So the work permitting system is designed for the business that they know that it exists. Meaning, if you're an accountant, if you're a lawyer, the government knows those accountants and lawyers are in the Cayman Islands to serve multinationals, and so they levy a significant work permit fee, a percentage of the annual income that they estimate, as a cost on those multinational companies for doing business tax-free in the Cayman Islands. And that's a symbiotic relationship. It works. But it doesn't work for like an upstart in technology that's making no money and wants to start from zero. So we needed a system that would allow us on a short-term basis to bring in lower cost permits, right? Just like with a Cayman Enterprise City would have those same benefits, but not so much attached to Cayman Enterprise City or like to an area or a geographic locale, attached to our locale wherever we want to operate from, because there's frankly just not enough real estate inside that sort of enterprise, special enterprise zone apparatus, and the real estate costs are frankly too high, for an upstart. We can't, because there the play to get a reduced permit is you have to lease in their premises at a higher rate than you could find maybe somewhere else if you're starting from nothing. So what the government did was they saw this and they said, you know what, you're right, that is a problem. Let's give you the ability on a short-term basis to grow low-cost permits and see where this goes. So you need to find those people, and these people exist in every government. In good countries. You need to find those people where you can story tell your ambition and have them help you in your journey. For the betterment of everybody. When we're successful and we have 70 staff, that's great for the country. Those people are consumers. They bring their own families down at Christmas. They travel. It's all a virtuous cycle for the country. So the government helped me by listening to my problem, and then offering me an apparatus to allow me to grow outside of a traditional framework. But as an entrepreneur, this is what I was saying. It behooves you to be a good communicator, not to be secretive, so secretive that it becomes weird. You need to kind of explain your vision and find those people that can help you in your execute your vision to give you the level playing field, so that you can grow. I mean, I would have grown my business in any event. I would have had to relocate to Silicon Valley. Maybe I would have had an even better outcome because I could have grown even faster, right? But the key is, I loved living in Cayman. I still do, and I love my country, my adopted country. My children are born there. I want to be a part of the community, and I want to do something good, where I live. And so, but I was able to find those like-minded people in government who helped me. So yeah. I hope that answered.
We're glad you stayed here, Frank. We're glad you're part of us. Okay, next. So the next question is, how did you attract the likes of Godaddy to want to invest? Can you talk about that experience? What were the pros and cons of this?
Yeah. So when you grow business, any business, if you're doing a good job, you start to get on people's radar. Competitors see what you're doing. They try to emulate you. We innovated a lot of different things in our business. We created a domain name registrar. So now we're competing directly with Godaddy in the sense that we offer a mechanism to create all names. Registrars are very complicated pieces of software because they touch other pieces of software. They interbind with other registries, and the longer you work at them, and the more engineering work you put in, and the more work you put into the interfaces, they almost take on a life of their own. They become an important utility on the internet. And as we worked and we put our heads down and we innovated and we intertwined with other pieces of software out there, other registries, and Godaddy realized, wow, this is very difficult to copy. If we can't beat them, join them, kind of thing. Godaddy, to be fair, is an enormous company, very, very successful. They've grown an incredible marketing machine in America, largely on the back of their Super Bowl commercials in the early days, and just early growth. What we offered was we were able to, our engineering in many respects was better than theirs. A lot of our software was better. Our engineering team was very strong. And so Godaddy saw what we were doing. They saw our interfaces and our user interfaces, the way that the website feels. Maybe this is a good spot to share one more lesson that I'd learned. When you're creating an internet business, any business on the internet, all you have is what you see on this screen here that we're all looking at, right? So when you're looking at that, every pixel that's out of place, furls a brow with your customer. Every time a button doesn't work, every time a color is off, if it doesn't work in one browser but it works in another browser, these are all. The saying that we adopted internally was, every time you make your customers think, you chip away at their good faith. And it's something that we live by, that we don't want to chip away at that holds in every business. If you make your customers think, what's this guy up to? You're chipping away at your customers' good faith in you. And so what we learned was, don't do that. Make sure everything is pixel perfect. Make sure everything works right the first time. Make sure everything functions well. And GoDaddy wasn't able to do that across everything because they're a very big organization. And they saw some of what we were doing as enviable. And ultimately they envied enough that they wanted to buy it. And that's sort of how we got there. They saw synergies that they could take the pieces that we had acquired and built and plug them into their apparatus and get more of a benefit than the cost that they would pay us to buy it, is really the short answer.
And when you sold to GoDaddy, Frank, did you get any backlash from anybody?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to have. So let's put this in context. We did that deal, and it was literally by coincidence right at the beginning of COVID. Right. So think about that. Nobody's looking at the sale of a small business. It made it into the local newspaper where we live, and maybe it was it was talk in our industry, but it wasn't like a shot heard around the world. COVID was happening, and everybody was talking about that, about lockdowns and about all of that. So we did get some backlash a little bit. You're always going to have, it's often the people that are closest to you that you don't know. They have a drink at night, and they go online and they post a comment in an anonymous name and let their dark side out and try to their jealousies and whatever come laid bare, and they're not but won't sign their name to it. That's human nature. You have to accept you're going to get so there's a lot of really good people out there, and there are a lot of people who have their own struggles, and we all have those. And so you have people who will vent and say, oh, we didn't get that much bad backlash though. I mean, probably the worst backlash we got was from our own customers, some of whom didn't want to be at GoDaddy, and they liked the idea of it being an independent registrar run by us, and would like to keep it growing that way forever. That just wasn't a fit for us. It was the business had cycled, and we were having trouble growing further. I could just see it being. It felt like the right time to let go, and you have to know when that is. I mean, every entrepreneur knows that, right? Has their own time.
Yeah. And there's so many different, options and business ventures you could have dove into. So how did you know that you were ready and right for this specific business in this industry?
A great question. I didn't. Sometimes the right business finds you. You don't find it. I was doing one thing in naming, and it just felt good, to me. And then it evolved into another. I didn't think at the beginning of my business, I'm going to run a registrar. I did imagine in my mind's eye having an office, having 70, 80 staff around me. Like it's not a goal, but if I would close my eyes and envision where this was going, I could kind of visualize having staff, offices. I didn't know what we were doing in my mind's eye, but I knew that we would grow into something much larger. And that's sort of what happened. We turned it into very much what I envisioned. I'm surprised we sold it for, as much as we did. We did several transactions with GoDaddy. We sold it in pieces. We sold the name administration piece. We sold the registrar piece. We sold the, and then as we started to sell those pieces, we thought initially, okay, well, we'll pivot and focus on one of our other business units. And we realized, we at one point, wow, we've just gone too far because we'll have to rehire a lot of staff. So it just became more, and then other suitors would come out of the woodwork and say, well, why don't you sell me this piece of your business? And so it gradually became, through osmosis, like we wound up selling many of the different pieces that I didn't think we'd ultimately sell. We'd created a registrar for brands. So if you think about being a brand like a Pepsi or Chanel or Flow, somebody big. The domain names are not often managed like you would manage your own domain name, with your credit card on you usually go through a brand management company that are a special registrar that, if you think about the domain name google.com, if that name goes dark because somebody removes the name servers or tinkers with it, I mean, it's a catastrophic breakdown on the internet. Those types of things happen. So those names are handled specially by special registrars with like triple authentication security to get access. Multiple people have to access and turn keys at the same time to get access to make changes to the domain name so that the internet doesn't break, because all the, email can go down. You can imagine if your domain name is managed by Gmail and you lose control of your Gmail. I mean, it's like you have to call the registry to reset name servers. It's a real catastrophe. So anyway, long story short, we created one of those registrars using some of our infrastructure, and we wound up selling that business unit. And we didn't think we'd ultimately sell that. We thought we'd keep it. So anyway, I don't want to go too deep there, but the right business finds you. You don't go looking for it necessarily sometimes.
Right. So going.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, it was. You go.
Go to ahead, the Frank, point about the right business. I'm gonna carry on to that point. So I've sold my business, right, and I'm now underemployed. Let's say, right, because I still have something to offer. I'm not going to retire. An entrepreneur doesn't retire, and I'm too young to retire anyway. So what do? I've always wanted to own a restaurant. I think I can do a better job running a restaurant. So I'm building a big Greek restaurant on 7 Mile Beach, on the corridor in the Grove. And why am I doing that? Because I'm passionate about food. I eat out every day. I love having there's a team effort, right, that goes into running a restaurant. I'm curious about the all the little pieces that go into making it great. And I like the idea that it becomes I'm social, so I like the idea that it becomes a center in the community. I'm trying to improve my country by building an inland safe harbor in Cayman Brac. If you go to the sister islands, there's no safe harbor really at all for boats, fishing boats, nothing. So how I see that as a huge problem. I was able to acquire some land using the money from the sale of my business. And I'm able to stitch it together and come up with a plan that I think is viable. I'll present that to government later this month. Did I wake up 2 years ago and say or 3 years ago that I'm going to do these things? No. I was curious about the restaurant, but I never thought I'd run a large restaurant. But the right business found me. It's something that in the confluence of my journey, it came to me. It's not something that I necessarily just sort of sought out. Did I want to build a port or a safe harbor? No, but I see a glaring problem. The land presented itself. It's something I can make a difference in my time that I think is positive for my country, right? And I want to do something good. And that's I think maybe probably the biggest lesson as an entrepreneur. You should, and I think most true entrepreneurs think this way, is I think they're always trying to do a good job and leave things better. I haven't met many entrepreneurs who are like corporate raiders who just try to buy things to take it apart to make money. Usually it's a little bit more of a nurturing dynamic to be an entrepreneur and a business builder than to be a stock trader or what's the word? Somebody who's, something that's more mercantilist, that's only about the money. It's often about the passion of trying to do good in business and do good in your time,
No, I love that. I love that you're still, pursuing other opportunities. You're creating opportunities. I love that you're investing back in Cayman again. We're really excited. I'll speak on behalf of the entire Flow team to come to your restaurant when it opens. So you'll have to keep us.
November.
Oh, perfect.
November.
Great. So going back to the beginning now, when it was just you or you just had a few employees, right? You're really getting things started. How did you keep your motivation? How did you keep going and kind of work through those early days?
That's easy. If the old saying again, grandma's sage advice comes in here, which is, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's true. If you wake up in the morning, with a dream and sort of a purpose at the same time, and you'll never feel like it's work. I'll be honest with you. There were nights where I'll never forget it when I was in the name business, where you have five little voices inside you. Well, one of them would say, isn't it time to like watch TV and do something now? But the other four would be like, no, we love this, Yeah. So it doesn't feel like work. It was very easy to stay motivated, because none of it felt like work.
And we feel your passion. We see your passion. We know you love doing what you were doing with Uni Registry. So how did you know it was the right time to sell? How did you get really comfortable
Yeah.
with that idea and that decision?
I could see that in every business you go through a cycle where you're growing a lot, and then that growth flatlines or stabilizes, and you have to kind of like recalibrate. And what happened was, sometimes you have to follow the signals from the universe. It was a couple of people had said, I'd be interested in buying your business, and one of them can't come to me at a time when I was like, you're going through this flatline area where you're slowing down in your growth and you're having to recalibrate. All of a sudden, somebody comes out of the woodwork and says, I'd really like to buy your business. I think we could take it further and faster than you could, and the penny drops. And you just listen for that signal. You have to be open to it at that time. And I was. And so you feel that signal that, now is the time to let go, to turn the page and do something new. I'd been working in the business. It was almost 20 years in my business. That's kind of a good moment to take stock and say, wow, that's a whole career, 20 years and one job. And to put it in context, my business was every single day. Weekends, evenings. I would go on vacation and still work 3 hours a night, at Christmas, New Year's, there was never a day off, right? No weekends. Friday meant it's only 2 working days till Monday, Saturday and Sunday are just 2 more days that end in a Y, So it was like, and at some point, your friends are all out on the boat at Rum Point, and you're like, maybe there's room in life for me, and so it was kind of a signal. There's room in life for me. I'm gonna take a little time off, and I've done all this. I'd made a little money along the way. It's not like all the money was in the business. I'd managed to save money through the cash flow of the business, and then I sold the business, and that allowed me greater freedom. I do miss it, because I miss the routine, and I think some entrepreneurs, I'm an entrepreneur that thinks this way, that I'm a creature of routine. I like my routine, and so I wear the same shirt, and I'll drink the same tea. You know what I mean? I'm not. You're not going to see a milkshake here tomorrow morning in my hand. It's always going to be a cup of green tea, and you're not going to see a polka dot shirt. It's going to be a blue polo or a white polo. Less thinking involved. Steve Jobs used to have one outfit, because less thinking. He liked his routine. I like my routine, and so I miss my routine. But now I'm creating a new routine. So. That's part of the charm of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm glad you've got, you get some time to really enjoy Cayman, and do some traveling and really enjoy, the the fruit of your effort, really. So one of our questions is, did you have any mentor for your business, and how did you find that person or inspiration or anything like that?
Do you know what? So I latch on to people. I love people in general, but I didn't have a mentor. I had a friend who would give me advice from time to time, who got me originally into the domain business, but over time I quickly eclipsed his business, right? In terms of the size, and so. And then I diversified into other businesses, and I didn't have a good mentor, to be honest with you. I would have loved to have found that person, but because I do love people, but I just wasn't so fortunate to find that person that that could help me be a spirit guide in my journey, and sometimes you get lucky that way, and sometimes you don't. You have to be your own mentor, and you take a little from everybody. You meet people maybe that aren't like a natural mentor that you go back to like Yoda every time you need help, but you meet I'll meet you and you'll tell me something, and I'll take something small from what you tell me, and I'll meet somebody else, and I'll take something from them. So rather than having one mentor, for me, I tried to listen to everybody and take away from them and build it into my own path.
Okay, we've got time for one more question.
Sure.
So how do you manage your work-life balance?
I feel really balanced these days. I mean, maybe a little too life balanced and not enough work balanced, just because, I used to work, as I said, like nonstop, 24/7. Now, I work, 24 days a month, 7 hours a day. I mean, it's not, it's a little different now. So I feel like I'm a little too balanced now, and I'd like to get back into the routine of work. The problem is when you're growing like a restaurant, for example, that it moves so slow compared to technology, and you have to deal with, construction labor. It's very frustrating. You have to deal with government regulations. You have to, just to get through planning, you have to deal with. So it's and then you have to execute all the work, which takes time in a supply chain issue. COVID, can't get things. So we're working through it. I mean, we have everything we need to get open, but it's just you have that. There's an old saying, when you dream that you're naked and you can't get home somewhere outside of your home, that you feel like you're running out of time. I have that dream a lot. So it's like I feel like I'd love to get I'd love to get into the next routine and do something really cool. And see where it goes. Maybe I'll have 10 restaurants or 100, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll run this one really, really well, and that'll be it. I'll learn from it, and maybe it'll take me into a new direction. I think the biggest takeaway for any entrepreneur is leave yourself open to the universe of possibilities that come to you every single day. Every single day, things will happen for you in your business. And it happens for each one of us. The slogan of my restaurant, the overarching slogan is "New Day, New Life." Every day is a new day where you can reinvent yourself. Everybody who's watching this, everybody who you and I both, everybody has the ability to reinvent themselves every single day. Most people don't. They get up in the morning, they go back into their routine, but every day is a new day to reinvent and to listen for an opportunity or for a chance to change your life in a positive way. And so, you should live your life by that credo of new day, new life. Let yourself grow, as a person, and embrace the opportunities that come your way. Don't turn your back on the signals from the universe,
Thanks, Frank. We're excited to see what you do next. It's been really great to hear from you and all your inspiration, your journey, and your secrets to success. So thank you again for taking the time to be with us today.
I'm deeply flattered to be here. I'm just like you. I just work hard and had some very good fortune. So thank you for having me.